today with Dr. Kaye. I'm Dr. Kaye Whitehead, here again to have another conversation with you about some of the stories that matter. Folks, as you can hear, we are live on location at Busboys and Poets, 14th and V Street in Washington, D.C. We are making signs. We are planting chants. We are getting ready for the activation. When our children tell our story, they're going to tell the story of today. They're going to talk about how we pushed back, how we rallied, how we stood 10 toes down to protect our history, to preserve our history, and to promote our history. We are saying hashtag hands off our history. And I'm inviting you to come down and join me. If you're in the area, and you should be, you really should be in the area, come down to Busboys and Poets. We're going to be here holding up the light until 7 o'clock p.m. Come out and be in the space with us. I have a long show prepared for you. I'm going to speak to Damon Hewitt, the President and Executive Director of Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights Under Law. I'm going to speak to Todd Cox, the Associate Director and Counsel of the Legal Defense Fund. Yes, I'm speaking to Barbara Arnwine, Tanya Clay House. I'm speaking to Tim Wise. I'm speaking to Janae George. And of course, I'm going to be joined by my girl, Professor Kimberly Crenshaw, in the 5 o'clock hour. We're going to lay this down for you. But the question we have to ask ourselves is, where are we at this moment? 102 days into the Trump administration, 140 plus executive orders, he is turning back the clock on civil rights. He told us that when we voted for him, we as in the collective we, not the individual we, because I didn't vote for him, when we vote for him, it was going to be our last election, and he's holding true to that promise. He is trying to take us back to what he called the golden age of politics. He wants to go back to the Woodrow Wilson days, back to the nadir of black history. He's rolling back civil rights one block, one brick, and one step at a time. The question is, what are you doing to stop him? We have found on this day that Trump has announced that he will nominate Waltz to be the U.S. ambassador to the UN. So how is it that you are insane enough to tweet out what's happening on Signal and they give you a promotion? It's what Michelle Obama said, white boys fail up. He is failing up from leaking information on Signal to now becoming the U.S. ambassador to the United Nations. But that's not where the real problem is. Sometimes with this administration, don't watch what's happening on the screen. Go behind the curtain. Like in The Wiz, when you have to look at Richard Pryor, go look at Richard Pryor behind the curtain, because you can figure out what Trump is doing. Because now, what is most disturbing is Secretary of State Marco Rubio. He's now serving as the National Security Advisor, the U.S. Archivist, the head of the U.S. Agency for International Development, along with his job, all high-level, intense work positions in the hands of one person. That is actually what Project 2025, which was formerly Project 1981, that's what they call for. Just a few white men in charge of everything. And this is a step in that direction. When we look at the first 100 days, we know we have to go back and figure out, how did we get here? We got to go back to come forward. We go all the way back and we think about FDR. It was in his administration that the first 100 days were actually counted. What he did in those first 100 days, he took America off the banking system. He made sure there was no run on the banks. He took us off the gold system. He turned back the Volstead the amendment, which led to beer parties all over the country, and people said we have to look at a president's first 100 days. Now, the only president to come close to what he did, other than Trump, is Ronald Reagan. Ronald Reagan, in his first 100 days, he actually passed every single recommendation in the first 500 pages of Project 2025. Now, I'm not sure if you read the 926-page document. I read it, so you didn't have to. But if you look at that, it lays down in the first 500 pages 60 recommendations for how to move the government into a few hands, how to set up an oligarchy, and how to break the government at its core. Reagan did it in 100 days. In fact, the only reason why he stopped is Ronald Reagan said, I don't want to break the government, I just want to cripple it. It's two different things to him. I don't want to break it, I just want to cripple it. So he left 40% of the recommendations undone. They said, no problem, we'll wait. They were playing the long game. I'm telling you, folks, this is chess, not checkers. They said, we will wait it out because there's going to come a day when there'll be someone in office. We will have the executive branch, we'll have the legislative branch, and the judicial branch, and we will move forward with our plan. That's the kind of patience that white supremacy has. They don't talk about what's happening today. They look beyond Barack Obama. They look beyond what was happening in HBCUs and say, we're going to play the long game. Because when that moment comes, when we set it up, we're going to roll out the plan we've been working on every single year. And all of that lined up in the presidency of Donald J. Trump. So when he got inaugurated on J20, lawsuits started on J21 because we understood what he was doing. And every step of the way, I've been warning you that what we were looking forward to, what we were waiting for, was the moment of a constitutional crisis. We are here now. When the Supreme Court told him to bring back Kilmar Abrego Garcia from Maryland, bring him back for due process. They said bring him back facilitated, and if you're looking, he is not back yet. So what do you do when the executive branch says no? What do you do when you realize that democracy only works when everybody agrees to the rules? What do you do when you realize that he who controls the guns actually controls the motion? That's the crisis, and that's why we're so concerned, and that's why we're in Washington, D.C. at this moment at Busboys and Poets. That's why we're pushing back. That's why we're standing tomorrow, and this is why you have to ask yourself, what type of country do you want to live in? I've come to the conclusion, no matter what I do, I'm not going to be alive to see the changes that are going to take place. He has broken the government so completely that it's not going to be turned around in my lifetime. Gen X, I'm sorry to tell you, we're not going to live through this. What we have to do is we have to build up that gene of resistance in Gen Z. Look to our children to be the ones to implement the change, because Gen Z's got to lay the pathwork for Gen Alpha. Gen Alpha is now in middle school and in elementary school. They're going to be the ones to benefit, and then they have to train up Gen Beta. Gen Beta was born January 1st, 2025. We're talking about the generations after us. We have to accept the fact that we are now planting seeds for trees that will never give us shade. We will not be able to sit under the trees that we're dealing with at this moment. But neither did Harriet Tubman, right? Neither did our ancestors, right? Neither did the people who did the work before us. They weren't able to sit under these trees. Neither did Dr. Carter G. Woodson. Neither did Ida B. Wells. They laid the groundwork for us. And unfortunately, on our watch is when we lost everything. I don't think we fully realize and recognize how much we have lost in 102 days. Like, my heart aches when I think about the work we did to make this world better for our children. Black Lives Matter 1.0 and Black Lives Matter 2.0, we were talking about astronomical strides in racial justice, in thinking about making sure this country was open to all. And in 102 days, one man has come into power. We have watched the collapse of democracy and the building of what we call an authoritative fascist regime. The reason why we're not sure what to do is because we could not even imagine it. I think we've gotten so comfortable with democracy, with stuffed down our throats of children. We don't even know what it means to live in an authoritative fascist regime. Well, now we do. Now we know what it means to live here. Now we know what we have lost. And now we've got to figure out, what does it mean to go forward? Well, that's what tomorrow is about. That's why we're being joined right now by Damon Hewitt, the president and executive director of the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights Under Law. Mr. Hewitt, how are you?
I'm good. I'm fired up. I'm ready to go.
Good. There he is, fired up and ready to go. Now, we had Damon Hewitt on the show earlier this week. You got him fired up earlier this week, so welcome back to the show.
Always great to be with you.
I love having you here. I want to start by just helping us to frame it, because the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights Under Law, I know you're keeping an eye on this. Talk to us about how our civil rights are being rolled back, and make it plain for the children in the room.
Look, all the things that we have taken either for granted or as given or as earned, and all things can be true, are under risk and threat. The basic premise that you can go to school and learn accurate history about what has happened with all peoples. The basic premise that what you're being told by your leaders is true. The basic premise that things that we do and that we've bought through blood, sweat, and tears convinced companies and colleges to do to protect civil rights is now being said to be illegal. Everything's being turned on its head. So this is not just a question of bad policy. This is a question of basic democratic principles. It's basically a question of, can we actually live free? Can we breathe free? And can we learn free?
I want to ask you, in this understanding of what you've laid out, I argue that black folks have always been the canary in the coal mine.
Always.
Like when we start dropping dead of COVID, it's because white America has a cold.
Word to
When they
Lonnie
get the
Guinier.
flu, we just keep going. Like we get everything happening in our community because we are the end of this tailwind. Can you talk with people about understanding this is a matter of human rights? This is our united struggle and not just a black folk thing right now.
It is a matter of rights. I mean, for the longest time, the material condition, the legal, political, social condition of black folks has been a way to measure the progress of these United States of America. From the days of chattel slavery to Reconstruction, to Jim Crow after Reconstruction, and 100 years after that, to get to the heart of the American Civil Rights Movement, our struggle has always been the barometer. But I'll also say there's a flip side. Things that work to help black people and black communities succeed, especially black women, work for everybody in this country.
Yes.
Everybody in this country. So it's not just about a plight that the bad things that happen to us are bad for everyone. That is true. But the good things, the investments, the assets in our community can be assets for the nation. Because black history is American history.
Yes, it
because
is.
the black experience is simply a microcosm of all the things that people experience in this nation. So we should be keeping our eyes on all of this, but we also have to lay some hands on it too.
Come on.
We have to lay some hands on it in terms of our sweat equity. We can't just play hay from the sidelines and say we don't like policy. What are we doing to leverage our various forms of strength, capital, and power? And don't think that we don't have power. We do. We have power in our voice. We have power in our dollar, where it's been and where it's not. And we also have power in the stands that we take and with whom we align ourselves. And we also know we're not alone. This is not only a black struggle, this is an American struggle. It's just that black folks are so often at the vanguard and also on the business end of the struggle.
I want you to talk about this notion of collective power because tomorrow is about collective power. Calling on all these organizations, civil rights organizations, including yours, including ASALH, the Association for the Study of African American Life and History, Dr. Carter G. Woodson's organization, which I'm the president.
That's right.
Of course, love that. African American Policy Forum and Professor Kimberly Crenshaw, everyone from the Legal Defense Fund to the NAACP, to the National Urban League, to the National Council of Negro Women, to everybody needs to be there because collectively we need to show up and show our power. Talk about why it's important for people to either be in the space if they can, because you don't have to be at the movement to be in the movement, and if not, they need to show up somewhere else for us.
You know, there was a great editorial in the New York Times. I don't agree with everything in the New York Times, but there was a great editorial a few weeks ago about the playbook to push back against authoritarianism. One key piece of that playbook is exactly what you're talking about. It was about solidarity. Because there is strength in numbers. But there's also, it's not just strength in the volume numbers, it's the strength in the shared struggle. If you want to weave a fabric, a proverbial American fabric, it's gonna look less like something you buy at a store and more like a patchwork quilt from your great grandmother.
Can you talk a little, I want you to finish that because I want you to build on that.
It's gonna look more like that patchwork quilt because it's gonna be, what she experienced, what he experienced from their community, their neighborhood, from their college, from their workplace. We have to put that together to create a through line for the American people so they understand it's not about us fighting for some special interests. We're fighting for everyone to be a meaningful part of that American fabric.
I like that idea of the patchwork quilt. I believe that some of the threads in there are based in these lawsuits. With the work you're doing, can you talk about the importance of the lawsuits? Because I believe it's hundreds of lawsuits that are being filed, and he is losing quite a few of them.
That's right. There are hundreds of lawsuits, and that's part of putting hands on them, right? The courts will not save us, but we darn sure are going to leverage the courts as an avenue for our own advocacy and voice. And for organizations like the Lawyers Committee and others, we connect deeply with our clients and community, not just to say we filed a fancy case, but to lift up their experience and their voice, to have your proverbial day in court. And so there's one lawsuit in particular I want to mention, representing a group called Chicago Women in Trades. We at the Lawyers Committee, along with the National Women's Law Center, a group called Latino Justice, also our Chicago affiliate, Chicago Lawyers Committee, and a law firm called Crow and Mooring. Shout out to them, because a lot of firms don't want to step up to the plate, right? We filed one of those many amazing lawsuits that so many people have filed, representing Chicago Women in Trades, an organization that has a major grant from the U.S. Department of Labor, a grant that they earned, right, to provide job training primarily to Black and Latino women to get into very well-paying jobs in construction, plumbing, and the like. The kind of jobs that people think women don't do, but women can do.
And do well.
And do well and get paid six-figure salaries in these jobs, right? And so that lawsuit was filed because that group was told you have to cease all equity and DEI activity. And they said everything we do is equity and DEI. They had no choice but to sue. And so we were able to get a federal court to issue an injunction to stop the Department of Labor from terminating their grant and to stop the Department of Labor from requiring any other grantee nationwide from being required to certify that they don't do quote-unquote illegal DEI.
Can you connect this for us to the fact that tomorrow, Saturday, May 3rd, in addition to being our National Day of Action where we're activating, it's also Freedom Press Day. At the same time that he is directly attacking the press, because we understand that the person that controls the medium controls the message, and he's trying to direct and control the message. Talk about the importance of the press and why that's also another area that we need to take our stand.
The publisher at the time of the Washington Post, Katharine Graham, famously said, freedom of the press is for those who own one. And what you're doing through this platform and people like you all across the country, you are getting the word out, the message out, because we're not beholden to the major corporations. We're going to hold them accountable, but we're not beholden only to those major media outlets. We are our own major media outlets, because we spread the word orally before there was anything on television or radio, and that's what you continue to do. It's all about influencing public discourse with the truth, and thank you for what you're doing to make that happen.
Thank you so much. The work we do on Today with Dr. Kaye, with this underground radio, is to try to bring attention. This week we've had everyone from Tavis Smiley to Barbara Onwine, Reverend Al Sharpton, Roland Martin. Everyone has chimed in. You're going to be on Jesse Jackson Jr. later, because everyone is picking up this message and pulling it forward. The last question I want to ask you, as we're trying to imagine ourselves beyond this moment, because I'm thinking that democracy, from where I sit, is broken. We got to think about what we're going to put back in its place. I'm telling people, I don't want to go back to what we used to have. We didn't have freedom and equity and equality in the old America. Why not imagine something different, since it's broken anyway? The path forward, what are one or two things that you can tell people they can specifically do on top of coming to the march tomorrow? What else can they do back in their communities?
We have to hold elected officials accountable. Silence is worse than acquiescence. Silence is worse than complicity. Silence is you're on the other team. This is not a time to be quiet for us or for our elected officials. Use your buying power of your dollar wisely. I'm not going to tell you how to use it, but use it wisely. But also make sure your children understand what's going on. They're never too young to get some type of word, some type of message. Because I think what's happened so often is some people get comfortable or complacent and think the struggle's over, and the next generation doesn't even get the word. We have to give that word one by one in our community. Otherwise, the message and the strategy and the resolve gets lost.
Thank you so much, Damon Hewitt, folks.
Thank you.
The President and Executive Director of the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights Under Law. Let's see if we can pull this all together before we go to break. Folks, we're live on location down at Busboys and Poets in Washington, D.C., my stomping grounds from where I grew up. 14th and V Street. We're asking you to come down and join us. We'll be here doing the radio show till 6. We have another program starting until 7. You should come and stand with us. If you're looking for a community, if you're confused about what to do, we have answers. That's the work that we do at AAPF. That's the work that we do at ASALA. And that's definitely the work that we do at Today with Dr. Kaye. We are lighting the way forward. Going in the break, let me give you a couple things you can do. What I call ASALA's North Star. The North Star, as we know, is what points the way to freedom. Here are 3 things you can do, and you can do them right now. Number 1, find the organizations that are doing the work you believe in and defend them. Something I got from Timothy Snyder. Don't just defend them with your thoughts and prayers, although thoughts and prayers are important. I'm a PK, I get it. Find a way to defend them with your time, your talent, and your treasure. And then stay around after break. I'll give you 2 more things you can do right now immediately to do a small daily act of resistance. Today with Dr. Kaye, live on location, Busboys and Poets. We'll be right back after the break. Todd Cox is going to join me for more conversation. Welcome back to Today with Dr. Kaye. I'm Dr. Kaye Whitehead, live on location here at Busboys and Poets. I'm expecting folks to cheer in the background. There you go. There are folks, I assure you, I am not here by myself. There are people in the crowd with me. We're on 14th and V Street, and we invite you to come down and join us as we do our show live on location. We are here because tomorrow is the National Day of Action, capping off the National Week of Action, and we're going to be standing 10 toes down, as my son would say. We're going to be meeting at the John Wilson Building right across from Freedom Plaza at 11 a.m. sharp, on time, Southern Baptist Church time, 11 a.m. We're going to have a bit of a program, then we're going to walk together to the Blacksonian, the Smithsonian Museum, of course, of African American history and culture, to make a symbolic stand to tell the world that our history is not written in pencil, but in pen. It cannot be erased. It cannot be marginalized. It cannot be removed. You cannot tell the American historical narrative without including black folks in that. I mean, we are the stitching and the thread that holds this whole thing together. To help me to understand that, I'm now joined by Todd Cox, the Associate Director of Counsel at the Legal Defense Fund, LDF. How are you, Todd? Thanks for joining us.
I'm doing great. Ready for the fight.
Ready for the fight. Fired up.
Fired up.
And ready to go. Well, let's talk about this because we're watching this moment when we think about the 3 branches of government. We know the executive branch is, my son's, completely YOLO, right? He is living his best life. You only live once. I'm going to crash this whole thing while I'm driving this bus. So let's take the executive branch out of here. Congress can also be taken out because they are absolutely not doing their job. Because they actually could stop every single executive order by passing a law to invalidate the executive order, and they're not. In fact, they're giving him a free pass. I mean, it's great that my man Cory Booker stood for 25 hours. I stood with them. I was crying. It's great that Hakeem Jeffries and Cory Booker sat on the steps. I was always there with them spiritually. It's not great that it's not moving the needle. And that's what we're looking for people to do. So we're using the courts as a way to fight back.
That's right.
And it's not forcing him to do anything. At least it's laying down breadcrumbs for future generations to follow. So I want to go back to come forward, because that's the thing for today. Let's go back and think about Brown v. Board. Because to get to Brown v. Board, what Thurgood Marshall talked about is that there were so many breadcrumbs along the way from Plessy v. Ferguson 1896, it gave them a pathway of how to get Brown through. So I want to have you lay out what it meant to do that long battle and why the breadcrumbs are so important.
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you for inviting me to join you today. Really appreciate it. So yes, taking us all the way back, LDF has been around for 85 years. Really confronting the kind of authoritarian attacks we're seeing right now, where we have a president and an administration that is challenging our civil rights norms, laws, infrastructure in ways we haven't seen for generations. And they're pushing the envelope on what can be done in the courts. What LDF did with Brown, as you said, was lay out a series of lawsuits that both in success and somewhat failing forward, led us to Brown versus Board of Education, undermining, eliminating the separate but equal paradigm which laid out before that. We have to do the same thing now, and that's what we're doing. So just like my family, my grandparents fled authoritarian Georgia and relied on the Legal Defense Fund, among others, to ensure that their civil rights were protected in that context, Legal Defense Fund, Lawyers Committee, other legal organizations are challenging what this administration is doing in almost every area of civil rights. For example, we have filed as many lawsuits now, almost as many lawsuits in this administration as we did the first time.
Wow.
And the two I want to highlight for you are one challenging an executive order basically requiring folks to bring what we call documentary proof of citizenship in order to register to vote, which would have eliminated voter registration drives across this country and eliminated the possibility for many of folks who changed their names because they got married, changed their names for any other reason, from actually being able to register and vote. We challenged that executive order and we won. We got a preliminary injunction preventing that executive order from being implemented. On the education front, this administration wanted to defund schools, to eliminate the possibility for schools receiving federal funds simply because they're providing equal opportunity for education. We challenged that as well, and we won. Are those final decisions? No. But what we've done is, along the way, laid the breadcrumbs for courts down the line to permanently enjoin this administration from unraveling our civil rights across the board. And I'll say one more thing. What this administration really wants to do is, through these individual executive orders, is pull at the thread of our civil rights infrastructure, our civil rights tapestry. And pulling at any one of those threads really is undermining the promise of Brown, which gave rise to all of the statutes that we hold dear and we entrust to protect our civil rights.
Now, I want to have you, as we go a little deeper into this, because I want to talk about that birthright citizenship piece.
Yes.
And so when people hear that, if you don't really look at it, you assume it means it's the 14th Amendment, when actually it's that 1898 case, the SCOTUS case. And I want to have you talk a little bit about the Wong Kim Ark case, because in the attack against birthright citizenship, it's not the 14th Amendment. It's around the idea of them extending that in 1898. Because you know, Wong Kim Ark, of course, was a guy from China who was born in San Francisco, went to China, came back to San Francisco. They stopped him at the border and said, no, you don't belong here.
Right.
He's like, no, I'm a citizen. And he fought it all the way to the Supreme Court. That's the case, that's the concern, because that's the one the Supreme Court could overturn.
Right.
Can you talk a little bit about what it means for the Supreme Court to reach back to things they've already done, similar to what Brown did with Plessy, what Dobbs did with Roe, and overturn what a previous Supreme Court said was unconstitutional?
Well, first of all, it would be devastating. But I think what we need to do in thinking about birthright citizenship lawsuit, which we actually filed a lawsuit to challenge in court, the executive order, is really look back to the text of the 14th Amendment. We have many in this country that are what we call textualists, people who want to look at the plain language of the 14th Amendment. If you look at the plain language, clearly the EO challenging birthright citizenship is unconstitutional. And I think that's what we need to harp on. We need to really say, let's look at the plain language, and let's look at the history of the 14th Amendment. It was designed to ensure the citizenship of who? Formerly enslaved Africans, formerly enslaved people. So when you look back at the history, as by the way a judge most recently yesterday did in making sure that someone was released from detention, looked at the text and looked at the history of the 14th Amendment, one can only conclude that birthright citizenship EO is unconstitutional.
So, but with it being unconstitutional, which I believe, I'm not a textualist, but I tend to, I follow along very well and watch a lot of Law and Order SVU. So I try to figure it out in my own way, right? But knowing that it's been deemed unconstitutional, when the executive branch, 47, chooses not to follow what judges are saying, whether he is arresting a judge, he said that, or even talking about dismantling even the branch of federal judges. Talk about the concern around that and that breaking point.
It's a huge concern, right? Because as you laid out, we have an executive branch that is coming after civil rights, human rights. We have a Congress that, for whatever reason, not need to get into the details, seems unable to step up and really provide that extra check that we need. All we have are the courts. All we have is the rule of law. So the best way to think about this, in my opinion, is to weaponize the rule of law, to continue to force the question, call the question, as our colleagues at the ACLU, Legal Defense Fund, Lawyers Committee are doing every day by bringing challenges in court, forcing this administration in the light of day just to justify their rationales for taking these actions. That, I think, itself is powerful. That, I think, itself is reminiscent of what our ancestors did for Brown and subsequently to make sure that even authoritarian regimes in the Deep South were held to account. And we take very seriously this administration giving lip service, at least, to not following what the judges are ordering them to do. What we need to do in response is force that question. Call the question by continuing to fight, continuing to file lawsuits, by continuing to use the rule of law to lift up our civil rights.
Then let's talk about the fourth branch of government. So the executive branch is doing its own thing, and we know that at this point we're all watching in horror as he's willing to drive the entire truck off the cliff, even if it means taking himself out. We're watching Congress for whatever reason, and we are a stone's throw away from where they sit. Whatever they have decided, it apparently isn't trickling down yet. Maybe it's some like secret plan at night that they're putting together. We don't see it yet. We have what your branch is doing, which is our courts, our lawyers. There's a fourth branch, right? That's the We the People branch.
That's right.
So can you talk about what the people should be doing? Because if we wait on the executive branch and we wait for the next election, there might not be another election. And when there is, there might be a number of people, particularly women who've been married, who might be disenfranchised and can't even vote. We can't wait 2 years. We actually have to act now. So talk about that fourth branch of government putting some feet behind what they're doing.
I want to tell you, the people are critical, right? And I think we've talked about this before. This idea of dreaming a better world. In legal defense, when we say we got to defend what we have, we got to disrupt what this administration is trying to do, but we have to not forget to dream. And the dream that I'm describing is reminiscent again of the dream my grandparents had who were sharecroppers, who fled authoritarian Georgia to plant roots in Cincinnati, Ohio, and to give me the opportunity to be sitting here today. That's what we need to do. We need to dream a better world, collectively dream, then collectively figure out how we're going to respond to this particular moment, remembering there will always be moments. And we need to make sure that we're building up our shoulders for others to be able to stand on to make progress going forward. As you said before in your last interview, we may not be around to see the conclusion. We have to make sure we're leaving an infrastructure, a foundation for others to stand and take forward. And in doing that, I think people need to do what they can. Do the work you have up to your capacity, give what you can up to your capacity, but also use your collective voice, as folks are going to do tomorrow, around this particular issue of what I'm calling truth-telling, and making sure that the government does not erase our history and thereby erase us.
So let's talk about protecting yourself at this moment, because we try to lift up on the show what people should carry with them. And so I kind of laid down 5 documents. You're the lawyer, so I'll have you let me know if we're on the right track here. And I'm like, put it on that scan app on your phone, because when they stop you, not if but when,
Right.
Because if you're raising your voice against this system, if you're in a black and brown body, at some point you will be stopped.
Yep.
You know, your color, your race, nothing is protecting you now. So you need to be ready. But I'm like, you need to have your driver's license. Like, show that that's your state ID. In fact, go and make sure it's that real ID.
That's
if
right.
you've gotten a driver's license within the last year and a half, they already made it a real ID. If it has that star at the top, you got your real ID. Second, I'm like, get that birth certificate. Like, just go ahead and scan it. Put it on your phone. That way, if they want to ask you if you're an American citizen, if they ask you, they're going to assume you're not until you prove otherwise. Have your birth certificate. I'm like, get your health card on there in case you have to go to the doctor. At this point, if you're in Texas, they're not even seeing people unless they prove citizenship, and that's even at the hospital.
Yep.
I said, if you are someone who is married, you need to get your marriage certificate. If you changed your name, they're now saying this whole question around having your name on your birth certificate not line up with your driver's ID, and that there's a problem. And having that birth certificate on your phone with your marriage certificate. And then I said, have your passport. Like, if you got to run and you got to get out of here, I mean, just in case we don't know. So can you talk about the importance of having your documentation?
I think that's important. I also think it's important to know your rights. What we're counseling everyone is, you know, we have a Doge form of government, where these government officials kind of show up at agencies. They're now showing up at private agencies, non-public agencies, and demanding documents and information. It's critical that we, as institutions, but as individuals, we know our rights. Fourth Amendment. All of these things that we used to take for granted, we need to understand and be able to push back and point to if we're challenged, either in a stop or people show up to our offices to challenge our citizenship or to challenge our rights. I think the other thing I would say is we need to make sure that, again, we're using our collective voice. We have organizers at the Legal Defense Fund who partner with people on the ground, not to organize them, but to listen and hear from them what their concerns are and connect them to whatever legal resources we can provide. So I think connecting, making sure we're acting collectively, and also knowing your rights are very important in addition to the documents you laid out.
Now, I'm not sure about that, because that's the point I want to ask.
Sure.
Okay, so I know my rights. I try to, anyway, be on top of them. But I'm thinking about the woman, and I believe she was in Oklahoma. She's from Maryland. Her and her husband just moved to Oklahoma, and ICE kicked their door in.
Yep.
They dragged her 3 daughters in their underwear outside in the rain, and she's screaming and crying, going, we're American citizens. Like, we have passports, we have our birth certificate, we have everything. And ICE did not believe, there were no questions asked. They took their phones, they took their laptops, and they took all the cash she had in the house. And they said, we'll give it back to you in a couple of weeks, a couple of months after our investigation. She knew her rights.
Right.
And yet this happened. So I'm just trying to figure out how to line both of those things up at the same, it's like a quantum idea, right? How can two things be true at the same time?
I think you need to be able to challenge authority, and they did that. But then, unfortunately, sometimes in doing that in the moment, you still can't arrest or stop bad things from happening. That's where accountability comes, quite frankly. And I know that listening on the news reports, the response from the government is we're going to investigate that. Well, that's obviously insufficient. So we're not the lawyers representing this person, but I'm sure that there's going to be some invasion inquiry, not generated by the government, but generated again by the courts and by this person. And unfortunately, that's sometimes how we have to look at things. I think of Brown being a post-harm solution that we're now seeing the benefits from, decades later. And I think that's sadly sometimes how we have to really push advancement in this country. But that's part of also being the shoulders that others stand on for the future to make sure we're going to be protected.
Well, my last question to you, before you remind people of why they have to come tomorrow, so I'm going to get back to
Okay.
that. But the Justice Department just lifted a school desegregation order in Louisiana.
Yeah.
And officials are calling the continued existence, it was a historical wrong. Can you talk about that in particular and why that's the new pattern?
Well, I think this Department of Justice, as we've seen from the very beginning, has decided that these lawyers are the personal lawyers for this president. They've decided these lawyers are going to be the lawyers to carry out this president's personal agenda. And the Civil Rights Division is sort of carrying that mandate out. They not only have they resulted in, their actions have resulted in losing 70% of the existing lawyers in the Civil Rights Division. They are restructuring, they are changing policy, and yes, they seem to be dismissing long-standing civil rights lawsuits across all the sections. This one in particular, desegregation case, as the article you're referencing discusses, just because it's been around for a long time doesn't mean the case itself wasn't valid. What it most likely means is that the case was needed, the supervision by this court is still needed. And I think the Legal Defense Fund and the cases we still have, which some might consider to be very old, that's what we stand by. We stand by continued court supervision, continued law enforcement until the remedy is resolved. The longer it takes, it's not a function of the litigation per se, it's a function of the harm that is continuing in these jurisdictions.
My last question is about this new executive order. I tell people that it's like while you're sleeping, you can't even sleep in this administration, because while you rest and you kick your feet back, he's dropping executive orders that we know he didn't write, that have been just sitting on a dusty shelf. They pull him out, he scribbles his name, and it just becomes, quote, the law of the land. There's a new one out called Loyalty Day and Law Day, where he says that under his administration, his new proclamation is about restoring loyalty and fairness to the Constitution under his administration, like making sure that you are completely loyal to the Constitution as he sees it. I'm telling you, if that doesn't sound like something out of a fascist playbook of my loyalty has to fall in line with how you define the Constitution. Can you talk about how the executive orders are not supposed to be binding laws, but they're being taken as laws because Congress is choosing not to go against them?
Well, you just said it. EOs are not the law. They are an expression of government intent, they are an expression of executive action, and they are challengeable. This administration is using that as a tool to, yes, basically force institutions to capitulate. And unfortunately, there have been some universities, law firms, and some
Name 'em.
others
Come on,
that
Harvard.
have capitulated precipitously. But I want to talk for a minute about those who haven't. There are folks who are deciding to stick together. I want to talk a little bit about philanthropy is deciding to do that. There have been lawsuits filed by a collective of law firms pushing back, who have decided that we're not going to precipitously capitulate to something that's not a legal action. The EEOC sent letters to law firms, sent letters to other institutions saying, we're looking into how you handle so-called diversity, equity, and inclusion policies. Instead of saying you have no authority to actually look into anything, you haven't really formally set up an investigation at the EEOC, some have said, well, we're going to go ahead and get rid of those actions. We're going to go ahead and get rid of those policies. We're going to capitulate preliminarily. So that's the danger of these EOs in this context. It's striking fear in some institutions. It's striking fear across civil society. But I'm proud to say the civil rights organizations, the legal organizations, the activist organizations are standing firm. And we are not going to be cowed precipitously by any of these actions by this executive branch. And I think that's going to be required of all of us in order to push back on what, as you mentioned through this latest executive order, an authoritarian government seeking to make their actions personal instead of actions on behalf of the American people.
So last question to you,
Yes.
Todd. Let's talk about it. Tomorrow is supposed to be a day coming together. It's the National Day of
Yes.
Action, coming at the end of the National Week of Action, and we're gathering on the steps down the John Wilson Building steps. I believe it's right across the street from Freedom Plaza. We're going to
That's
meet
right.
there at 11 a.m., and we're going to have a program there, and then we're going to walk together to the Blacksonian, what I affectionately call the Blacksonian. We're going to be there lifting it up. Can you just remind people that I don't believe that anybody can do everything. I do believe that everybody can do something.
That's right.
So talk a little bit about maybe that's a small something you can do if you're in the area.
That's right. It's part of that collective voice we were talking about. We want to say hands off our history, hands off our museums, our books, our office space, whatever, our lives that we're using to lift up the history of black people in this country. Black people and others are particularly in need of protecting that history because we're most often the ones whose history is ignored. And when we finally have the museum you described as the Blacksonian, when we finally have all kinds of institutions lifting up black history and artifacts of our suffering, we now have extremists who want to wipe that all away. The result of that wouldn't be just erasing the exact artifacts or books, it's frankly erasing us.
Right.
I talked for just a few seconds ago constantly about my ancestors taking up, to getting into a car and coming up north to leave an authoritarian Georgia. I have that memory because people talked about it, someone documented it, someone took pictures. If we erase our history, we lose all of that, and in essence, lose who we are. So we have to take their hands off. We have to ask them to take their hands off our museum, take their hands off the books, the artifacts, the kinds of things we set aside to record who we are so that we remember who we were in the struggle and we can dream forward for a better day.
Thank you so much, Todd Cox, folks, Associate Director, Counselor of the Legal Defense Fund. Thank you so much for joining me. I want to talk a little bit about the Black History is American History affirmation set up by the Freedom to Learn Network. So I've been talking about this for the last week or so, telling people about making a pledge wherever you are. So I'm going to go ahead and read it. And if you want to just, lay your hands on your radio or lay your hands on your computer screen, wherever you want to do, and just touch and agree with me, because maybe we need to be affirmed, maybe we need to be reminded, maybe we need to be told once again about the importance of our history, that despite what they want us to believe, we don't have to eat every crumb that they give us just because they've tried to convince us we're hungry. We're not that hungry, folks, and we have to stand on that. So Black history is, American history affirmation. We affirm that Black history is American history, without which we cannot understand our country's fight for freedom or secure a more democratic future. I want to stop there for a second because I think some people get confused about democracy and they think we've been living in a democracy and we have not been. This was not a democracy, J19. That's not the democracy we were talking about. People were not being fully recognized or participating in this experiment. It was an experiment that was failing, except it's better than what we have now. And sometimes we get so used to brokenness that we don't even understand what it means to be whole. We want to be whole. So this idea of a more democratic future is making sure that people understand that democracy means all voices are included, not just the oligarchy, not just folks with money, not just the 1%, not just folks with jobs. It's for everyone, and it means you got to reach and do what black women did in the 19th century, lift as you climb. I'm going back to their affirmation. We must protect our history, not just in books, schools, libraries, and universities, but also in museums, memorials, and remembrances that are sites of our national memory. I'll stop here for a second, because I believe that what we're fighting now is a war on memory. I am from the South. I'm South Carolina, which I argue and stand firm. It is the most racist state in this country. I know what it is to deal with racism. But South Carolina, when they used to teach us in school, they talked about the war of northern aggression. It was not a civil war. It was a war of the North coming down to change the way of the South, with this notion that the South was going to rise again. They are fighting a war of memory, and at this point, they are winning. Going back to the affirmation, the effort to erase black voices, ideas, art, and history is the effort to erase black lives. Folks, here's my footnote. Our lives cannot be erased. They can use as many erasers as possible. Trust me, there will be a black person somewhere on the other side of this freedom line that will still be standing. Harriet Tubman said, if I have to stand by myself, then by myself I will stand. Going back to the affirmation, without black history, we abandon our capacity to accurately assess the state of the republic or imagine a stronger one. Without black history, we lose the important stories of resistance undertaken to defend our democracy and the tools we need to resist today. Without black history, we forget how the civil rights movement created opportunities for other marginalized communities to secure equality, and we limit our capacity to organize for justice now. Racial inequality remains real. If we are not able to understand it, tell its history, and honor those who have risked everything to solve it, then we lose our capacity to carry the legacy, brilliance, and resilience of these freedom fighters in our lives and to future generations. Democracy is a constant struggle, and the erasure of our history prevents us from fighting to preserve it. That is the Black History is American History affirmation. And I believe if there's nothing else that we can agree on, we should be able to agree that the sight is better when everybody can see. The mountain doesn't just need 5 people up there. Everybody can join us in this battle. You're probably wondering what else you can do. I told you that the revolution is not going to be televised, but it's also not cheap. So make sure you're defending those organizations with time, talent, and treasure. A second thing you can do is you can make sure that you are learning the truth about who we are, and you're using every opportunity you have to share it with people. Now, I will tell you a story, and this is probably why I'm going to be arrested. So I was in the grocery store just the other day. I have one of those little microphones. I said, you know what, let me just go down to the aisle of vegan, goods and services, and I put my little mic on, got up there with my vegan rice, chickens, and beans. I said, you know what, I'm just going to speak out Black history, and folks kept going, don't go down aisle 4. There's a crazy woman on aisle 4. That crazy woman was me. I was like, you know what, if it means I have to turn the grocery store into a classroom, then me, my beans, rice, and my mic until the cops come. A brother came up and said, hey, sis, I just want to stop you for a second. Hallelujah, raising the fist. They're talking about calling the cops. Is this something you're willing to go to jail for? I said, no, I'm going to leave. I'm good. I just want to make sure that in the moment I have, that I'm teaching in the spaces where I exist. Turn every space you have into a teaching moment. Now, leave before the cops show up. Make sure you don't get arrested. But you know what? All I'm saying, if I have to drag one person, like Plato's theory of the caves, one one person kicking and screaming into the truth of what's happening, and that's one more person who cannot join their fight. Like, what's that zombie thing? Like, let's save one person at a time from being bit because we don't need more zombies. Save one person at a time from being bitten by the Magites. We don't need more of them. We need more of us. This is what you need to do. Join us tomorrow. It is a day of resistance, but it's also a day of prayer. So my dad, and I say that, I'm a pastor's kid. My dad has informed me he's not going to walk. He said, but I will get up and pray. I'm like, you know what, let the prayers go up, and those of us who can walk, let the marching begin. This is Today with Dr. K. I'm Dr. Kaye Whitehead, live on location at Busboys and Poets, 14th and B Street. When I come back, let's get Tanya Clayhouse up here sneaking in the door. We can talk about who's going to be joining us tomorrow. Stay with us after the break. Welcome back to Today with Dr. K. I'm Dr. Kaye Whitehead here on location at Busboys and Poets. Woo! Yes, folks. We're down on 14th and V Street, down in Washington, D.C., and we are here doing my show live. Now, folks who are just tried in the wool, Today with Dr. K fans, you know I am never out of the studio. Mike and Justina, they never let me out. But I did ask for permission to come to Busboys and Poets, so Mike said okay, and we packed up the wagon and came down the road from D.C. because this is a moment that calls for us to be in person. This is not something we could do from Baltimore. We had to come to Washington, D.C. in preparation for what is going to happen tomorrow with the activation that's due to take place at the John Wilson Building steps that's down right across from Freedom Plaza. We're going to meet there at 11 a.m., and then we're going to march or walk, depending upon how fast you move, down to what I affectionately call the Blacksonian, and we're going to symbolically show up to say hands off our history. But let's talk about why that's important. I'm going to talk to Tanya Clayhouse to kind of lay out the day for us. CNN has laid out how 47 is bending the arc of U.S. history in a new direction. Now, you may recognize that from Dr. King talking about the moral arc of the universe is long, but it bends towards justice. Well, that was actually said back in the 1600s, right, by pastors back then, that you have to look out toward the long moral arc, and it doesn't bend on its own. You have to push it towards justice, push it towards freedom. And what we are finding right now is that 47 and his team of minions, they're pushing it in the opposite direction. They are actually addressing and even acknowledging that racial injustice toward people of color, it is what is in right now. We were pushing towards racial justice. That's no longer the thing. In this new America, he's no longer separating church and state. That's out. He's now saying we need to put federal funding behind bringing schools together so they can have more religious schools, because Trump believes there's an anti-Christian bias out here. Folks, let me just say, as a PK, I mean, I'm from the Southern Black Baptist Church. There ain't no anti-Christian bias. Christians are doing well and have been in this America for a very long time. But in his world, they're being discriminated against. He has this real fear and hatred towards what he called wokeness. And then he's surrounded by a bunch of men who really believe that women have two particular places they need to be, in the bedroom and in the kitchen. Why else are they offering $5,000 to get pregnant and stay home? And I'm talking to my sisters now, and that's sisters with an A, not E-R-S. They are not giving us $5,000. They don't want black women home giving us $5,000 to have babies. They're talking about the fact that what we saw in Texas is that the highest rate getting abortions right now was college-educated white women. They're not talking about you, sister. You can go ahead and continue. That's not who they want to stop. They want to stop white women from being able to exercise bodily autonomy. They're rolling back things like the Civil Rights Act of 1964. They're rolling back the Voting Rights Act of 1965. They're going after the Fair Housing Act of 1968. They're dropping DEI programs and pressuring universities. I was on Harvard's side for a minute. I'm not a Harvard person. I'm all in the HBCUs. If I'm going to go to Harvard, I was going to go to the black Harvard, which was Lincoln University, Pennsylvania. But Harvard said, we're going to stand against this administration. What concerns me and why I told people who call my show going, I'm going to send my $5 to Harvard. I'm like, Harvard doesn't need your $5. Send your $5 to an HBCU. Harvard's fine. Harvard has decided that they were going to stand against the administration, and the one area that cost them nothing, which was being able to have affinity group celebrations during graduation, that's where they're saying no. They're telling affinity groups, whether it's the Black Student Union, first gens, low income, not only can you not celebrate your graduating from Harvard, but you can't have a faculty advisor, you can't have a room, no cake, no punch, no ice cream, no ribbon. We're actually going to fold to the Department of Education on that. See, this is why we have to be concerned. I'm always telling people, sometimes we lie to ourselves and we think that, oh, if I date a wolf, at some point he'll become a vegetarian. No, folks. He was born a wolf, and at some point you're going to be on a menu. Harvard made their money on the backs of slavery. So why would a place that made money on the backs of slavery go, you know what, I'm all about black people. What can I do to help black folks? No. We've got to be clear about the people who are in the room and what their agenda is. They are in lockstep, whether they tell us or not, with this administration. We're now listening to bragging rights. Agriculture Secretary Brooke Rollins said, look, we're not organizing money based on the color of skin. They've canceled all the contracts that black and brown people had at the USDA. Not because they weren't qualified. They went and said if a black or brown person was in the main role, they canceled that contract. Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy bragged about how, well, if you're having DEI policies, we're not going to fund your projects. They've killed diversity efforts in every single state. The Office of Management and Budget Director Russell Voigt told Trump, don't worry. We're making sure that anyone that got sued for DEI and paid out, we're going to restore their money back to them. And then Pete Hegseth, which to me is just a frat boy who failed up, like Michelle Obama said. Dude is, tweeting out on Signal. He said the only people he trusts, his wife, his brother, and two guys whose office was next to the bathroom. So you're talking about dropping bombs with your wife, brother, and two guys near the bathroom. I don't even understand how he has this much power. But he says we've ripped wokeness out of the military. We've ripped out DEI, we've ripped out trans, we're taking this country back to greatness, says a man who's mediocre. There's something wrong with two things trying to be true at the same time. This is why we're in Washington. Not to stand against Pete Hegseth, but you know what? Sometimes blessings come and you have to be happy about them. Not necessarily stand against him, but to say hands off our history. As fast as they're uprooting DEI, don't worry, folks, we can plant those seeds in our children. They don't know we are seeds. We will grow wherever we are planted. I'm joined now by Tanya Clayhouse. Tanya is a senior strategist here at the African American Policy Forum and the CEO of Clayhouse Consultants. Tanya, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you, Dr. Kaye?
Well, welcome back to the show because, Tanya, every time you come, stuff is happening. Like, there's some people who just show up and stuff happens because you have been organizing, getting all the principles, and I'm going to have you talk about what it means to get the principles of civil rights organizations to not just show up tomorrow, but to show up for the past week.
Right.
Talk about the National Week of Action. Who's been involved and what's taken place so far?
Well, I appreciate that because, this has been something, a labor of love, and I appreciate the context that you've given with regard to why we have to show up. That there is so much that is happening in this world right now that we couldn't just confine this to one day. We've been doing this for a couple of years, Freedom to Learn, Day of Action, but now it had to be a week. We have an administration that is attacking all of us, our culture, our history, in an effort and intentionality to take us backwards. And so the Week of Actions actually started in the church, and it's ending in the church for this week. I've been working together on this, and we started April 27th with Black Church Activation, ensuring that our pastors and their congregants, that everybody understood that this is a movement. It's not just one day. This is something that has to continue. We know that the Black church has been fundamental, foundational in how it is that we have organized in our community. So that's why we started there. Throughout the week, we have been engaging African American Policy Forum with our partners, with the legacy civil rights organizations like LDF, like Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights Under Law, National Council on Negro Women, Urban League, with National Coalition on Black Civic Participation, and other partners as well, because we knew that there has to be some activism each day. And so this Freedom to Learn week of action meant that, okay, every day somebody can do something. What I always say is that you may not be able to do everything, but you can do one thing, all right? And pick what it is that you can do. If it's just taking a selfie with your, at a location where you are that is lifting up the importance of why Black history is American history, do that. Post it. That takes 5 minutes. You can, what we have given our partners, and we are working with our partners across, and not just those I mentioned, but those, in the larger diaspora of civil rights and progressive organizations, to say, look, you can also encourage families to download the digital library card, right? To make sure that you understand what's going on. That we have a history, like how we started with Freedom to Learn, that there is a history of banning our books. They started there because they don't want us to know our history. They don't want us to know how to fight back. They don't want to don't want us to understand what it took in order to push back on what we're seeing right now. And so they started banning those books. And so they started telling us that, oh, our children, my children in school right now can't read Ruby Bridges. My child can't read in school Malcolm X, autobiography of Malcolm X. My child can't read To Kill a Mockingbird. That was revolutionary for me, those types of books. And so we are saying you can download that book. You can download the card and get a list from the Brooklyn Library of all of those books that you don't have. There are other actions. We're saying, look, if you don't want to do that, send a letter to your local newspaper or your media. Send some letter to the editor, because we know this has to be a grassroots campaign. This is not just from DC down, this is everywhere. You've got to be mobilized on the ground. So let them know that you care, that this is, Black history is foundational, like everyone's history. It is part of American history. We are a diverse community, and we cannot ignore and skip around what happened and the ills of our past, because if we don't understand that, we don't know how to move forward. We always say that, right?
Right. You have to kind of know where you've come from. Before we get into talking about tomorrow, I want to actually go back to the beginning, because you mentioned the Black church activation, and that was something that was important to us folks, thinking about starting in the Black church, because during the civil rights movement, it was the Black church that they went to every night. Like during the Montgomery bus boycott, they hung out in the Black church. I grew up in the Black church. What my dad has been doing every day of this week, again, I'm not expecting everybody to march, I'm expecting everybody to do something, but he's called me every morning, and I think he just enjoys calling me first thing in the morning, trying to catch me. It's my dad. He'll call early. It's like my dad never sleeps or slumber. I'm telling you, it's like first thing in the morning. But what he's been doing is he's been giving me a scripture every day. And so the scripture he gave me for yesterday, I'm going to share that one, and the scripture for today. Yesterday he called, and he doesn't say hello, he doesn't say how are you, he just starts preaching, right? Because he needs some type of platform. But yesterday was Proverbs 21:15. When justice is done, it is a joy to the righteous, but terror to evildoers. My dad said, when you do justice, evil folks are going to have a problem with it. He says, you got to make sure that you are being surrounded by folks who are uplifting you. That was yesterday's word, getting me ready for this weekend. Today's word was Proverbs 28:5. I told you I'm a PK. Don't get me preaching up in here. But today, Proverbs 28:5 says, evil men do not understand justice, but those who seek the Lord understand it completely. My dad said evil folks will never understand the fight for justice because they believe that injustice is correct. We're fighting against people that foolishly believe that the rights of the wicked, the rights of the evil, the rights of the 1% trumps everybody else. It's not just that they want to have all the food, but they want to ensure that we don't eat. Like, that's a certain kind of evilness.
It is. There's a certain type of cruelty that is innate in this administration right now. There's an othering that is happening. We know, and it's intentional because they recognize that there's a fear of loss of power.
Yes.
All right?
Yes.
That's what's going on. They recognize that the demographics are changing.
They are.
That this is not
By 2040,
by 2040
they will be in the minority.
Earlier, they will be in the minority, and they're afraid of that. So therefore, what is happening? Efforts are being made, suppression of the vote, so you don't have an opportunity and ability to have representation.
Women, people of color,
exactly,
immigrants, they want to make
LGBTQ,
sure.
everyone, they are targeting and they are othering so that therefore you're not human. And so that's what you see, especially with immigration, with immigrants here, that they are attacking and targeting people to say, oh, they don't really mean, they're not anybody, that you don't need to worry about them. And unfortunately, that is taking grasp in our society. They're capitalizing upon the selfishness and individualism of many who think that as long as it doesn't impact me, I don't have to worry about it.
But it's something they've done to black people, which is why when black folks tell me, well, the immigration issue isn't my issue, it doesn't impact me until it is. But that othering is something that was done to us. I always say, nobody wants to be a slave, everybody will take one. Like, I really do believe if they started giving away people to do everything for you, you won't call it slavery, but you will bring in this unpaid help to do the stuff you don't want to do. Yeah. You need someone else to other. And black folks, women, people who benefited from all of these changes should be the last people on the chopping block to other anyone because we have been othered. And that's what we fought against.
It is what we fought against. And it's what we can't forget, and it's what others can't forget, is including our allies in the movement. There has to be an understanding and a recognition that, yes, we have been fighting for years. Yes, the civil rights movement. Yes, black leaders, women who have been creating this infrastructure that everybody has benefited from, the civil rights infrastructure that women have benefited from, that people with disabilities have benefited from, LGBTQ, that everyone, other populations of color have all benefited from what has been done, particularly within the civil rights community and the black community. However, not everybody wants to come together and recognize that centrality. And that's why we're here today. Because we have to say, black history is American history. It's all of our history. And if you let that go, if you ignore it, you're harming yourself. You're losing out on what it is to be an American and to understand that our strength is in our diversity. Our strength is in who we are individually as a culture and how we come together.
And people are starting to finally get it. I think one of my favorite callers was this white guy who was calling to say, look, there's injustice. I finally see it. Now, he was calling from jail, which I didn't understand. Like, why are you using your one free call from prison to call my show? I was like, dude, we don't have bail money. We can't help you out. There's not going to be a march. I mean, but thank you. He called. He's like, I'm in jail. This is my call. I was like, okay, what's up? Like, what do you want? But he was calling to say, look, there is racial injustice. I'm going to do what I can. I said, you organizing in prison, or you going to wait till you get out of prison? In any case, it's not until it impacts you. Yeah. It's not until grandma has to come out of the nursing home. It's not until that good factory job is gone. It's not until your pension gets touched. It's not until that 401k starts to shrink. Then people understand that this is not just a black issue, not just an immigrant issue, not just a woman issue. It's an all of us issue.
It's an all of us issue. Not until people recognize why their young son or daughter cannot go to Head Start.
Yes. I'm a Head Start baby, by the way. Did you know that?
Excuse me?
I'm a Head Start baby.
You know what?
See, that's what I'm saying.
Head Start baby. I'm affirmative action baby.
That's what I'm saying. I'm a baby of it all, actually.
I'm a baby of a lot of things, and I'm proud of it. And when I even in sign out, when I even say that, or say affirmative action, I said, affirmative action. I was an athlete. So why are you assuming that it's just because of my skin color?
There you
just
go.
because of my diversity? I was also an athlete. So you don't know how it is I got in, just like anybody else doesn't know how somebody attended a school. But my point is that we have to make sure that we are engaging and helping people to understand that cruelty, what is happening, is going to hit your doorsteps.
Yes, it is.
That's how.
Yes, it is.
I mean, I always say it's not hyperbole to understand how fascism, how things started in Nazi Germany. People thought that, oh, it's not me. And until it was too late, all of a sudden it was at their doorstep. It became you.
There you go.
And so your othering, that occurred. And so now we're looking at, people are saying, wait a minute. And eventually they're going to say, okay, now I don't understand why I don't have health insurance. Well, because you thought that this was something that was only going to impact others. Suddenly,
It's
it's now at your
impacting you.
doorstep.
I don't know if that's kind of an American capitalist thing. I will say that when you were talking about how the assumption is that you're there because you're black, I remember my sons went to, in Baltimore City, went to an all-boys private school. And I remember we were in line once and a woman made this comment about how, you know, my sons were there on a scholarship. And I was like, you know what, no problem. You're paying the whole thing. Hurry up and pay your bill so my bill can be covered. I don't have a problem with that. You float the whole boat. I said, because actually, if reparations is what it's going to take for me to get through this school, I will take it. Pay your bill on time. Don't ever be late, Karen, because when you're late on your bill, it's going to impact me getting my money so my kids can go to school. Look, you know, a rising tide lifts all boats, Karen. Like,
right.
come on, let's lift this boat right on up.
Right.
Folks, we are getting ready for Saturday. One last thing, Tanya Clay House, before you go. Just remind people, where should they be tomorrow at 11 a.m.?
They should be at 11 a.m. at the John Wilson Building, City Hall in downtown D.C. at 11 a.m. Come with us, join us, and the community of civil rights leaders.
Rain, snow, storm, hell, if they're throwing rocks, whatever it is, you just need to be there. The revolution is not going to be moved because it's raining too much. Now, I might be in my car watching you, but I will be there in the place.
I'm going to pull you out.
Pull me out. Now, just one, I will say, that are we just going to stay there? Talk about the whole thing.
No, thank you. So we're not just going to stay there because we feel that we can talk about the issues. We can make sure we're educating about the issues, but we also have to show action.
Right.
All right? And we've got to show that we're locking arms as a community. And so after the program, we're going to walk, march, whatever it is you want to call us.
Whatever you want to do.
We are going to move. We are going to move all together in unity. As one towards what we affectionately call a Black Smithsonian.
I was going to say towards freedom, but
towards
not freedom, but toward the
towards
Black
the Smithsonian. And so we are going to move there. We're going to then circle the Smithsonian and lock arms and have a visual there.
I
And
love
so that's
that.
what we're doing.
I love that, folks. If you're trying to take any of our museum stuff out the back door, don't do it tomorrow because we're going to be there at 1 o'clock. Today with Dr. K, I'm Dr. K. Wise Whitehead. Thank you so much, Tanya Clay House.
Thank you.
We'll be right back after the break.
All right.
Thank you, ma'am. Donald Trump gave a commencement speech at the University of Alabama. This is why I will never roll Tide, okay? Let me just be very clear. If you're bringing in 47 for your commencement address, then you can't expect me to be in support. That's why I'm a Notre Dame graduate. I'm gonna always stand against roll Tide. He told them, when he addressed the 2025 graduates, he said, don't try to be someone else, coming from someone who's trying to be someone else. He said, don't try to do great things, coming from someone who's trying to do great things. He spoke for about 20 minutes about the importance of tariffs while he's in the midst of a tariff war that we are presently losing. He actually used this moment. Now, I've graduated from college, and I think at my graduation speech, it was Desmond Tutu was at my graduation speech. He gave the commencement address. We were all crying in the audience with Desmond Tutu, and Desmond Tutu was talking about living a life beyond yourself. That's what Desmond Tutu told us to do. I've gone to all kind of commencement address. In fact, I'm giving a commencement address at Crystal Ray. They asked me to come give the commencement address. And I'm going to talk about living a life beyond yourself. What did Donald Trump tell them to do in his commencement address? He spent 20 minutes talking about tariffs and about how the election was rigged against him. So you're sitting there getting ready to graduate, and he's screaming about how I'm a victim against this system, and he vacillated between listing all of his political enemies and encouraging students to fight. I probably would have put my little hat down. I probably would have done what they did to Joe Biden, which was students stood up and turned their back to him. Let me just say, folks, everybody can't do everything. Everybody can do something, which leads me into our next guest. Sylvia Cyrus, Executive Director of the Association for the Study of African American Life and History, is joining me for the last couple minutes. Hey, Sylvia.
I'm delighted to be here.
I am delighted to have you here.
To be in this house.
Woo! Sylvia is with us. I'm telling you. Asala's in the house, y'all. I'm telling you, ever since I became president, Asala's all over WEAA now. We are connected. But I want you to just very quickly talk with us, because one of the things with Dr. Carter G. Woodson, it was about protecting, promoting, and preserving Black history. There's a direct connection between that and, of course, hands off our history. So can you talk about the work of Asala at this moment in terms of lifting up the National Week of Action?
Absolutely. And I want to start by saying, if you are not a member of Asala, go to asalh.org and join today. Because if you are serious about the work that we are doing right now, then you've got to be a member, because Dr. Woodson laid down a foundation that said if we care about who we are, and we do, and if we want others to respect us, and we do, then we've got to stand up. We've got to join and lock arms with others to promote, protect, study, research, but most importantly, share the news of our history. And it is incumbent upon all of us to do our part. Dr. Woodson knew that although our organization at the time in 1915 had very few academics, but he knew that it was up to the academics to share the truth about our history to the people, and for the people to take it to the community. And the one thing that we have learned, Dr. Kaye, is that we're not going to be able to depend on public school education.
Nope.
We're not going to be able to depend on anyone to tell our story but us. Because when you look at how phenomenal and amazing we are, what we have done with so little, why wouldn't you be afraid? Why do we expect them to tell our history when it just makes them look pale in comparison? So what I'm going to say is, join somebody, join something, join Asala, join hands, but you have got to get up out of your seat. You have got to say something, you've got to do something, and you've got to stand for the institutions that we helped build to tell the story, to make America a more perfect nation. And it is up to we, the people, to get this job done. And folks, we have made it through many challenges on this land. We made it all the way through that Middle Passage.
Yes,
we made it through enslavement. We made it through Jim Crow and Reconstruction and the Civil Rights Movement. It's never been easy, so anybody who's thinking that it's going to be easy and gee, I'm afraid, then you're not relevant to what is happening today. We have got to stand up, we've got to stand tall, and that is the message that Asala is saying today. Join us in this struggle. Join us tomorrow at the museum. If you're not in D.C., go to the museum in your community.
Yes.
If you don't have a museum, go to your library. If you don't have a library, buy a book. Take a selfie. But be proud of what we have done. And if you're not proud, nobody else is going to be either. So join Asala. Join this movement. Because we're going to be better coming out this than we went going in.
I know, that's right. That's why I had to have Sylvia. Thank you, Sylvia Cyrus. Sylvia is from Asala, the Association for the Study of African American Life and History. She said, join something. Join Asala, join the African American Policy Forum. She said, now let me go back. You said, come to the museum, the Blacksonian. If you're not near the Blacksonian, go to the museum in your community. If you don't have a museum in your community, go to the library. If you don't have a library, buy a book. If you can't buy a book, then you need to go write a book. Because that's what Toni Morrison said. If the book you want to read hasn't been written, Toni Morrison said you need to write it. Sylvia said, if you can't write a book, send a tweet. If you can't send a tweet, send up a smoke flare. You're saying just do something tomorrow. You gotta do something. That's how we stand in unity. People cannot tell me that they're tired. I'm tired. My mom is tired. My dad is tired. And dad is calling me with scriptures, bugging me all day long. My mom said, can I bring my cane? I'm like, Mom, you're in South Carolina. Don't come to the Blacksonian. Just stand on your porch and yell out, I love Black history. Just do that, right? Get the kids off your lawn and just say, I love Black history. Get your T-shirt, Mom. There's something you can do.
Absolutely. And we have great T-shirts and products at asala.org to help show how you promote Black history. Make sure you're wearing one of those T-shirts.
Get a T-shirt
Be
on.
proud
Now,
of
I
the
think
work
it's so
we've done.
funny. I'm looking at you, folks. If you don't, Sylvia, you don't see her. She's in her Asala shirt, but she has a button on. Now, folks who listen to the show, you have heard Tim Wise, and someone said, the favorite white guy who always talks about racial history. He threw out a slogan, and I'm embarrassed to say, I wish it was my slogan. I wish I had done this, but the slogan we have on our buttons, I take my history black. I like to think that's in the vein of Malcolm X. I don't want nothing integrated but my coffee. Malcolm X and Tim Wise, I take my history black. We got tote bags, we got buttons. Folks, you have to do something to stand up and be counted. Sometimes you have to stand with many, which is going to be tomorrow at the Blacksonian, and sometimes you may have to stand alone. Go to your local library. If they're pulling books from the shelf, that doesn't stop you from buying them. You know, if you can't get Ruby Bridges in the school, buy your child a Ruby Bridges. What I would do with my sons is whenever I would buy them a book, I'd buy a second book for them. And say, you know what, you now have 2 copies for Ruby Bridges. One for you and one for anybody you want to give it to. Give it to a friend, give it to a frenemy, give it to an enemy, give it to a teacher. But you now have a book to give away. That's how we teach our children the power of their history.
Absolutely.
We teach them how to share it. Now yesterday, Sylvia, I want to say this before I get you off of here. Donald Trump, when he gave the commencement address. Now, usually commencement addresses make you cry, make you think about your future.
I think I was crying when you told me.
Yeah,
when
oh,
we-
yeah,
when
no,
we
no.
heard what
He
you
makes
said,
me
I was
cry all the
crying.
time. I just cry about him. But he just said yesterday in the commencement address, he said, they all hated me in my first term, but them MFers all love me now. Now, if I was a mom who's paid Roll Tide money for 4 years, and I sit up there, and that's what you're going to send my child out in the world with. Not do great things, not believe in yourself. Now you got this. Not make your bed first thing in the morning. Not make sure you floss, but they all hated me, but now they all love me. I don't know if I would have been sending my kid a message to get up and get out. Like, we don't have to mail us. Why are we sitting here in this moment? And I have questions with people. I'm like, sometimes you showing up gives power to those who are seeking to defeat you, seeking to erase you. Come down and show that you're not afraid, because there's power in numbers. Show that you stand with other people. Like, this is a moment for you to do one small act of resistance.
Absolutely. And Dr. Kaye, you know, one of the things that we have to recognize is that we have been trained to be polite,
Yeah,
to
that
be
isn't working anymore.
culture, you know, be correct, politically correct. And this is a day when that whole paradigm is shifting. To be politically correct is, like you're saying, to stand up and turn your back, to stand up and walk out. We're going to have to go back to and relearn some ways to get this job done. So being in a place where you have power, so often we don't realize the power that we have. And the power of the people will prevail. And we have to believe it right now. We will prevail if we just stand up and say what is true and say what is right. We'll get through this, because we've gotten through worse. It's
Yes.
hard to believe, but we've gotten through
Yes,
worse.
we have.
We'll get through this, but we've got to stand up. You got to come out tomorrow.
Come out
You
tomorrow.
got to go someplace tomorrow.
somewhere, go
You
to a
got to wear
library.
a shirt tomorrow.
Put a shirt
You
on.
got to join an organization tomorrow.
Join something
The
tomorrow.
idea that, you know, it's too late, you know, I have heard some people say
It's never too
it's
late.
not our time. Let somebody else do
Get
it.
your
We're
groceries
tired.
tomorrow.
That's not what this
Get
deal
your
is
real
all about.
ID tomorrow.
No, everybody has got to be in this, because when we win,
We're gonna win.
everybody's going to want to be on the front line saying how we got
Come
over.
on.
So come on out tomorrow. We're going to see you. If, as you said, it might be raining, it might be pouring.
It might
you know,
be. He might make it
oppression
rain.
doesn't stop just because the weather is bad. You're going to have to come on out and
You gotta come out and do something.
You gotta come out and
well,
do
he
something.
said that Joe Biden controlled the weather anyway. So Joe Biden, since you control the weather, please give us some sun tomorrow because he
wow.
believed that the Democrats control the weather. Folks, South Korea has given us a blueprint to standing up against corrupt regimes.
Absolutely.
There is a way we can do this. Now, I'm not sure if the folks over at SCOTUS are listening to me. I'm not sure if they're not busy at this moment. They might be chiming in. Hey, Ketanji girl, I'm with you. My Supremes are still there. Come on, Sonia Sotomayor. Come on, Elena Kagan. Come on, Amy Coney Barrett. Like, come on and get with the program. But they've given us a way to do that. You take down the regime standing around him. You go after everybody holding up this piece of power. If you knock down his base, there's nobody left standing. Show that the emperor has no clothes by standing against him. As long as you pretend he's well dressed and you keep acting like things are normal, you're part of the problem. Like, I don't have many friends anyway because I don't like a lot of people, but there are a lot of people now on my enemies list. Everybody who's acting like this is normal, I can't even hang with you anymore.
Right.
Because this is not normal.
Not at all.
What we're going through, this is a matter of life and death, and we're probably not going to survive. But if I'm going to go down, I'm not going to be, at least not inside the burning house. At least let me step outside and the house will burn down and take me with it, but I got to do something.
No, we're going to survive, Dr. Kaye.
We ain't going to survive,
We are
Sylvia.
going to survive. We're going to have some hard days, but I'm going to tell you.
It's hard now.
We have made it through worse, and I'm going to say, keep the faith, people.
Keep the faith. Keep hope alive.
Know what is right, because unless you believe, then when all of these lies
They're
are
lies.
being spread, you start saying, well, yeah, maybe the sun is purple.
Maybe
Yeah,
he is a
it
king. Maybe he does have clothes
Exactly.
on.
Maybe he does have clothes on. No, you have to know that when you stand for what you believe in, that some days are not going to be as bright as others. This is the way life is.
This is
and
the way
we
it
just have to
is.
stand up and stand tall around what is right. Meet us tomorrow.
Tomorrow.
Be Asylum members. I know you can hear me. We have some
you've been coming
great
out.
Asylum members in Baltimore,
They came
Washington,
early.
D.C., Virginia. If you want to drive down from
Come
New
on
Jersey, I got
down.
a lot of good friends up there.
Walk if you have to.
Come on down.
Take the bus if that's what it means.
Exactly.
Come and join us because, folks, I'm being very clear, and I like to always interject, as you know, Sylvia. Sylvia and I talk every single morning. For some reason, Sylvia doesn't sleep or slumber. I mean, I think she bleeds Asala. I don't, but she's trying to make me do so. She is the executive director of Asala. I'm the president of Asala. Tomorrow is a moment, but it's not the only moment. I want to end by what you said, Sylvia, because you said something powerful. You say powerful things all the time, but this one was really powerful. If you're in the DMV area, come down and join us at 11 a.m. You say if you can't get to the Blacksonian, go to the Black Museum in your community. If you can't get to the Black Museum, you don't have one, go to the library. If you can't get to the library, buy a book. If you can't buy a book, write a tweet. Can't write a tweet, yell out your window. Just say I love Black history. Do something tomorrow. Sylvia Cyrus, I look forward to seeing you tomorrow at 11 a.m. Folks, today with Dr. K, I'm Dr. Kaye here. When I come back, Professor Kimberly Crenshaw is going to come up here and join me for the last hour. Very good. Welcome back to Today with Dr. K. I'm Dr. Kaye Whitehead, here again to have another conversation with you about some of the stories that matter. Folks, we are live on location at Busboys and Poets, 14th and B Street. Yes, we are excited to be here. We have been live for the entire time. Busboys and Poets, it's been such a good space. The energy, the people that have come through, everyone we've had on the show so far, but we're not done yet. We have another special hour. I told you I was going to have a special treat for you. You thought I was sending you money. No, I just got a good show for you. Something special in this last hour. And then if you're in the DMV area, come by after 6. We're going to be here till 7 p.m. for this special last hour of Today with Dr. K. I'm going back to where I was last Friday. Last Friday, as we kicked off the National Week of Action, I was joined by a very good friend and colleague, Professor Kimberly Crenshaw. You know her work. She's, in addition to being the executive director of the African American Policy Forum, she's also the award-winning host of Intersectionality Matters with Kimberly Crenshaw. We figured, why not have a double dose of goodness by getting Kim up here to kind of do a little co-host skit and scat with me. How are you, Professor Kim?
Okay, I am so excited to be here.
Woo!
Woo! I'm feeling fired up. It's great to be on location. This is the first time I've done anything like this.
Oh, look at
okay,
you.
so plenty of firsts going on right now. We are at the center of the action. It's exciting to get ready for tomorrow. So I'm seeing people are working letters to the editor. We're working on posters. We're working on our chants. And this is our opportunity to merge our two audiences. So
Yes,
I
which I'm
can't
excited.
wait to get going.
This has been great, folks. I feel like we are now in the middle of a major merge because usually I work with Kim with the National Day of Action. She said, because, you know, she's always asking for more. She said, you know what? Instead of just doing the regular National Day of Action, why don't you pack up your entire radio show, bring it to D.C. to Busboys and Poets? I should have said no. I'm
No,
kidding.
you shouldn't have. No, you shouldn't. You did the right thing.
I did the right thing because it's been amazing.
It is amazing.
To only be a stone's throw from where we're going to be tomorrow.
Absolutely.
Can you just help people to understand what it means to have the Freedom to Learn network and how it is that we are lifting up everything and we're bringing all these audience together? Like, what do we have in store for our last hour?
Well, Kaye, what we have in store for the last hour is really a deep dive into the fact that what we are facing right now is not new. We know throughout the history of African Americans, the effort to suppress our literacy, our knowledge, our ability to read, our ability to narrate our own experience has been the key to sustaining white supremacy. So there's nothing really new here, but here is the piece that I think is so shocking to people now. If you want to take away people's humanity, if you want to say that equality is actually wokeism or reverse discrimination, if you want to erase the imperative of moving forward with more equity, then the key that you want to do is to erase the history, erase their narrative, erase their struggle. So that's precisely why they're going after the Blacksonian. It's precisely why they're going after our ideas, our narratives, and now our artifacts. So we want to talk here about how to connect all of the repression that we've seen up until this point to the Smithsonian. I'm so excited to have two of the smartest people I know talking about this. So thank you for co-hosting. Let's get into the conversation.
We're gonna get it going because we have a lot planned. I know before you do the introduction, folks, I just want to say this is not a new voice. I feel like we're back to last Friday because last Friday on the show, we had Professor Kimberly Crenshaw and Tim Wise. And so we're back here together. Let me toss it to you, Kim, to just kind of frame it for Tim and bring him into the conversation.
So Tim Wise, as many of you know, is anti-racism author extraordinaire, educator, and I'm proud to say senior fellow here at the African American Policy Forum.
Woo!
So, Tim, among many of the recent erasures in Black history, you have a starring role. It's a very interesting thing. So it's a little bit, it's a little bizarre. So it was a couple weeks ago. 400 books were removed from the Naval Academy Library in Annapolis, presumably on the orders of the Defense Secretary, I'm not even going to name him right now, who has been seeking to squash what he calls all DEI and woke crap from the nation's service academies and the military. Now, the list of banned books is overwhelmingly Black authors speaking Black truths. But, Tim, you are in fact the single most banned author at the school with 4 of your books yanked from the shelf. So first of all, let's all give him congratulations.
The most banned author.
You know, being banned is sort of like, you know, a 4-star recommendation. Go read that book. If they don't want you to see it, you need to read it. So talk to us a bit about first of all, what it's like to be targeted in this way, but more importantly, what it tells us about this moment that we find ourselves in.
So, well, I mean, look, it is an honor to be among the band in a moment like this in American history. Obviously, I do think it's hilarious that my white privilege has let me down in this particular moment. You thought it would protect me and keep my stuff on the shelves, but apparently not. I honestly, I thought there were only 3, I should say, that were banned, and then somebody pointed out that White Like Me was banned. I didn't think it was because I thought Pete Hegseth saw it and thought, oh, one for us, you know. One for our team. We'll leave that one in, and then someone explained to him what it really was, and they took it off too. You know, here's what I think. I think that what it means for the country, and if you look at that list, I mean, it's 385 or whatever it is books, and it says what we know about this country, which is racism is okay, anti-racism is objectionable. So Mein Kampf can stay on the shelves at the Naval Academy, and the midshipmen there, they can read that. The Bell Curve by Charles Murray and Richard Herrnstein, that can stay on the shelves. Camp of the Saints, which is this racist fantasy novel about the quote-unquote Great Replacement, that can stay on the shelves. Racism is not being removed. Anti-racism is. And that is actually, if you really think about it, you want to understand American history, that is American history, because every attempt to change the narrative, to create an honest and truthful narrative, has been pushed back upon. Whether we're talking about the attacks on Carter G. Woodson, whether we're talking about the attacks on John Hope Franklin, the attacks on African American studies programs, the attacks on your scholarship, right? We know what gets banned. And the reason it is under attack, let's be very clear, is because there is a recognition on the part of those who prefer the system as it is, that if people, particularly young people, before they're having to sweat their mortgage and worry about day-to-day concerns as much as you do when you get older, if young people learn the truth, right, if they understand the history of injustice and inequality, then they are going to want to fix it. They are going to want to address it. If you strip them of that wisdom, though, if you take that knowledge away, then it becomes possible to say, hey, y'all, you see all this inequality? It's natural. Nothing happened. There's no backstory, right? It's just these people are broken, and that's why they're in this condition. And these people are better, and that's why we are in that condition. So erasing the history is not an academic matter. It's not an issue for your local college or university and the historians within it. It is an issue for everyone, because when you remove the narrative, you remove the ability to understand why we still have to have equity measures, civil rights laws, the entire infrastructure of civil rights. So that's why it's being attacked at the same time as that infrastructure.
I just want to note, folks, if you're just joining us, this is Today with Dr. Kaye. I'm Dr. Kaye Wise Whitehead. We are live on location here at Busboys and Poets. I'm going to keep letting you know it's the last hour of the show. I'm doing a special co-host with Professor Kimberly Crenshaw. She's brought a couple of her friends here to lay out what's going on for the National Week of Actions. So, Kim, I'm going to turn it back to you to kind of frame out who else has joined us today.
Always rolling with my friends. I want to welcome Karen Attia in now. She is a columnist for the Washington Post. She is the winner of the 2019 George Polk Award and chosen that same year as Journalist of the Year from the National Association of Black Journalists. Welcome, Karen. So let's talk a little bit about the media's contribution to this conflagration that we have. So we've been talking about how the Trump orders, feel like a new frontier in erasure, but in reality, the media, they weren't doing such a good job, in the first place. So I'm thinking about how when a politician does something racist, the media calls it racially charged, right? Or when they do the both sides thing. So there's, the blatant racism of the Great Replacement theory that they just frame as a point of view rather than historicize what Great Replacement is really about. So as a media professional, someone who's up all in it, right? Help us understand, number one, the media's tendency to downplay honest discussions of racism and how that has set us up in this moment not to be able to understand and address it.
Very good question. Thank you all for having me. It's so good to be here. I'm so glad to be a part of the squad, Kim's squad. So this is a very good question. I've said this for years. Anyone who follows my work that I believe in precision when it comes to language. I believe that language is a battlefield, and the first battlefield we have of any sort of fight is in our minds and in our imaginations. And these sort of racially charged, racially tinged is a deliberate obfuscation, part of causing confusion and not being able to, or removing our tools from us being able to fight, is to make things a little messy and swampy and swaggy, and maybe it could be this, and maybe it could be that. Maybe we need to spare white feelings, right? And I'm in the opinion section, so I don't have to be neutral. I can look outside the window and not say, well, maybe it's this, maybe it's that. I can tell you the sun is shining. That's my job. And I think where we are right now, and I feel sometimes like a lone voice in the void about calling a thing, and also this is how power gets reinforced. Not just reinforced, but entrenched when there's this deliberate smoke screens, head fakes, right? And I just think, as an opinion writer, at least I get the freedom to say, hey, no, this is white supremacy. No, this is not just DEI and weird acronyms, and this is, I would say, a segregationist wave. These are not layoffs. These are not normal layoffs. These are purges to me. So my job, I think any, writer who has the privilege of having freedom, I think our job is to constantly adjust the frame and to constantly keep, our eyes on targets and refuse to be muddied by rhetorical smoke.
Well, Karen, speaking of calling a thing, you recently wrote a column about why we should actually call what the administration is doing resegregation. So maybe it doesn't have all the signs, maybe it doesn't have the overturning of laws, not yet, but well, actually a little bit of that too. But certainly reinforcing the idea that when we are in places, elite places, places of authority, and we see black people there, that is a problem that has to be fixed by the purge, right? So we're understanding that our presence in these places is interpreted by them as something wrong. The question is why so few media outlets or journalists or commentators are willing to speak plainly about the racial contours of this grave assault on democracy. It's like, see no evil, hear no evil, speak no evil. It's like, how are y'all not seeing this? So talk about that for us.
For my industry to fully confront that, even in the administration, they might need to take a look at their own newsrooms and perhaps not, deliberate purges, but definitely a slippage. We are less diverse as a media industry than we were 20 years ago. We are less diverse as a media industry than we were 20 years ago. We actually are in a moment, even recently now, where media industries are actually refusing to release their diversity statistics.
Wow.
So again, when I talk about muddying and obfuscating and putting smoke screens, our own media industries are putting smoke screens even in front of themselves to prevent scrutiny. So with that context in mind, I believe, a lot of it is, again, a refusal to really confront the fact that we are showing echoes of 1920s America, of Woodrow Wilson era tactics. It definitely blows up the myth of American progress and American exceptionalism. Personally, I would argue that this country could not handle having a black president twice. And I think there's a frame to be had that having a black man in office, not just once, but twice, this country has decided we will never have that again.
Yes,
So
yes.
to do that, you destroy the pipeline. You destroy the pipeline in academia, in corporate America,
Yep.
in the government themselves, so that, again, the white majority will never be ruled by one of them again. And of course, closing the pipeline to black progress and black advancement closes the portal to other groups' advancement, right? So that's my argument. I can argue that because I'm an opinion, but but I think we are confronting the reality that sadly, legacy media especially its role has been to reinforce the status quo, and it always has. It's not new, so we're not in a new fight. But those of us who are in it, so we do our best. But again, we are in a segregationist purge, and we have to think of new ways to keep reminding this country that this is who y'all have always been.
Thank you so much, Karen. I want to build on what Kim has been talking about with you. And Tim, I want to bring you in one more time before we go to break. As Karen noted with regard to media appeasement, we've seen the same kind of behavior among others too, right? Like we've seen it with K-12 schools and higher education institutions and government agencies, and even nonprofits are responding in very particular ways to the current moment. What gives you pause about the way in which they're trying to answer this question? Are they doing any better than the media? And really, what's the risk of all this accommodation? It's like 3 questions in one, Tim.
Right. Well, I mean, first off, I mean, the actual landscape of capitulation and accommodation is really quite serious. You know, and this has been going on since before Trump 2.0. I mean, even after the first Trump term, when the states began to roll back and to ban curriculum at the K-12 level, we saw those of us who spend a lot of our time going around the country and giving talks and doing workshops and trainings saw the demand fall off dramatically because of the fear, right? The fear of alums, the fear of trustees, the fear of state lawmakers. There are about half or more of the states in this country that are not going to bring speakers or trainers or anyone to come talk about these issues. Even a school like Harvard, which recently did stand up to the administration on a number of levels, as opposed to a lot of other schools that haven't, even they are renaming their DEI office. Even they are, you know, in some ways, I would say, accommodating more than they should. Now, I do want to say this, though, and because I don't want to leave everyone with a sense of complete defeatism. I have also been working with schools and even corporate folks in the last several months who are refusing to back down. And I want to hold those up. And unfortunately, I'm not sure I can name them because I don't want to put them in the crosshairs. But let me see, because I haven't gotten clearance from them to name them, so I'm not going to do it. But let me say this. I've been working with one particular school. It is in California, one of the few states that is trying, at least at some level, to stand up to the administration. And they've got an initiative specifically for black student success on their campus, which is called a Black Thriving Initiative. And they are refusing to rename it. They are refusing to lie or prevaricate about it. They are saying this is what we are for. Here are the reasons, and we'll die on this hill. And I respect the fact that there are schools that are doing that. They are defying the administration and saying, you want to come for us, you come for us. This is part of our mission. I'm doing an event this coming week with a corporation. It's a company that you've never heard of. In all likelihood, they say that. They say, you've never heard of us, but a lot of our products you use every day. Again, I can't tell you. It's sort of a mystery. But let me tell you, this is a company in the middle of a state that is a very purple state politically. It is potentially dangerous for them to continue to stand on principle and to stand on their business when it comes to this stuff, but they are doing it. So the situation is dire, but I want folks to understand that when we stand up, whether that is a college, whether that is a company, whether that is a K-12 school, whether that is a journalist like Karen, whether that is anybody that decides that we're done with this and that we're going to stand on principle and fight for not only black history but American history, not only black truth but American truth and the reality of the situation, we can in fact win. And that's an important lesson for us all to remember.
I want to note that as we're talking with Tim and Kim and with Karen, which we really appreciate having all 3 of you here, this is a special show for Today with Dr. Kaye. For our diehard listeners going, what's happening on the air? We are live on location at Busboys and Poets at 14th and V Street, folks. As we've been saying over and over again all week, and really since November, you cannot obey in advance. You have to push back. Thank you, Tim. Thank you, Kim. Thank you, Tim. Thank you, Karen. Professor Kim is staying with us because we're going to continue to co-host this show. When we come back, folks, Janelle George, Melanie Campbell, Barbara Anwan, like 5 black women just going to lay it out as we go into the weekend. Stay with us today with Dr. Kaye. There's more after the break.
All right, 3, 2.
Welcome back to Today with Dr. Kaye. I'm Dr. Kaye Wise Whitehead, here again for the last half hour of the show. Folks who have been following along with us, you know for the past week, we have been lifting up the National Week of Action every single day on this show. We rolled through our second national convening. We're here at a live show at Busboys and Poets, and tomorrow we're going to be on location. I am so excited because this last hour has given me the opportunity to sit with someone whose work I've been sitting with now since I was in graduate school, but to sit here and actually have an opportunity to co-host with Dr. Kimberly Crenshaw, who's often on my show, but now she's like sharing the seat with me because she hosts the podcast Intersectionality Matters. Professor Crenshaw, welcome back. Yes. Folks, we are here. We also want to send out a thank you to Busboys and Poets at 14th and V Street. If you're riding by and you feel the ground rumbling, it's because we're inside. Go ahead and park and come on inside and join us. Professor Crenshaw, before we get to the rest of your squad you brought up here with you, we know that tomorrow's a big day. So we're going to be meeting at 11 a.m. And folks, we're going to meet down at the John Wilson Steps across from Freedom Plaza at 11 a.m. sharp. Professor Crenshaw, first to you, why should people make it a point to be there if they're in the area?
You know, there are those people who think that we're not going to fight for our history. There are people who think that these are just artifacts. They think that other things are more important. We know that without our history, without the struggle, we are not a people. A people need their story, they need their history, they need the struggle that to be talked about and to be known. So it is important for us to go beyond, these are important things that we've been doing. We've been tweeting, and we've been texting, and we've been posting, but at a certain point, you gotta put your body where your values are. You gotta stand up and say, we will put our bodies in front of your attempt to take this away from us. So we need to make a visual representation of the passion that we have for ourselves and for our history. So if you're sitting on the fence, if you're thinking, well, will it really make a difference? Let me tell you, when we show up and show out, that's how we win. We're not going to win this sitting back and talking, ain't it a shame? You got to do something about the fact that it's a shame. So if you don't show up, shame on you.
You got, well, you know what? This is a perfect time to let Kim keep the mic and just introduce us, back to the air. For some of them, Melanie and Janelle George, can you talk with us with them and kind of frame what we're doing here in this last half hour?
So look, there's no secret that we are moving towards an autocracy, and many of us believe that we're already here. Knowledge is the kryptonite to an autocracy, right? Think of it this way. If you're a strong man, and you're trying to impose an unpopular agenda within a democracy through deception and through defamation, what stands in your way? The thing that stands in your way is knowledge. It's critical thinking, it's science, it's history. It's all the things that are currently under attack. So it's not a coincidence that Trump 1.0 established its first beachhead by attacking what? Critical race theory.
Critical race theory.
That's what he went after first in the 2020 order. That's because critical race theory provides critical thinking. It empowers people to fight back. It gives them tools to see the unseen, to speak the unspoken, to see the structures behind this society. So that's why you see this administration attacking knowledge, and especially knowledge about race. You see it in universities, the legal professions, independent media, sciences, and as of yesterday, public broadcasting.
Public broadcasting. You know, that especially breaks my heart.
You know that
is
slices
us here,
home.
WEAA.
So we wanted to connect these dots, and here to do it with us is one of my brilliant colleagues from Georgetown Law School, Professor Janelle George.
Woo!
Thanks for stopping by, Janelle. So I'm going to start with you. You're the perfect person to address the attacks on black knowledge that started with critical race theory, but it extended to 1619, to all sorts of knowledge and disciplines that came out of our history. So as an education law attorney and also a legal clinic director, what is it about this knowledge? What is it about our artifacts that is so threatening to this particular order?
So I tell my students, first of all, I'm trying to be cool. I'm sitting next to one of my sheroes, Melanie Campbell, but I'm trying to be cool. I'm trying to be cool, y'all. But so I tell my students, history is relevance for them, right? Think about when you go to the doctor's office and you're filling out all those forms. What questions do they ask you? They ask you about your medical history, but not just your history, the history of your mom, your dad, other people in the family, right? Because what you think may be a cold may not be a cold, right? So history helps us to understand what's going on, but I think what they're afraid of through all these attacks is what history tells us about ourselves as a country, but also the power of the people, right? So we have great leaders like Melanie, right? But I also think it's important for us to recognize the power all of us have as people from where we stand, right? So whether that's showing up tomorrow, whether that's what you study, what you teach, wherever your location is, recognizing your own power. So part of this obscuring history is obscuring the reality that ordinary people have driven these movements of social change, have secured civil rights. That's what they don't want us to know, is more about our own power.
So now with that, I want to make a note that what we're looking to do, folks, is connect all of this across the board, making sure that we are clear about what's going on. I am delighted to welcome another friend of the show. I, too, like Janelle, I'm like, we got Melanie Campbell, President and CEO of the National Coalition on Black Civic Participation and convening of the Black Women's Roundtable, who joined us at not just our first national convening, but our second national convening as well. Melanie, I'm so happy to have you here. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
So you have been at the forefront of helping us convene again for this year's Freedom to Learn and at the National Coalition. You have been connecting this assault on our knowledge and history as undermining our very ability to participate in our democracy. Why is it important that we not only express our displeasure, which you're telling us we should do, but that we actually show up, put our bodies on the line to defend our institutions and museums?
And so what that saying says, that where there's no struggle, there's no progress,
Yes.
right? And unfortunately for us as a people, we've had to always struggle. But, and one of the things that we know, our history in this United States of America is that they've always wanted to erase our existence, our humanity, who we are, and our role in building this nation to be the United States of America. And so as we go through this moment, you know, and we were talking about this the other night, and I've been it's just been on my spirit to continue to look back to see what does history teach us about this moment. And that's why I keep thinking about the first Reconstruction and the 1800s, when the president says he wants to take us back to the 1800s. How far back are you talking about? And then you move to what people coin, anyway, the second Reconstruction. What did we do? And every time there is a major moment in this country of our progress, there's always been this retrenchment.
Right.
That is centered around the fact that they don't want to see us as core to what this nation is, that we were only here, came here to serve. And so it's been really heavy on me. And the closer we get to tomorrow, it's even heavier, right? But we're going to get out in those streets tomorrow. And say you're going to be in the streets. We're getting in those streets tomorrow. Say, where y'all going to be? We're going to be in the streets, right? They've been wondering where the black women were going to show up. We're going to be out there tomorrow with our brothers and all of our allies. But when you think about getting to like the reality around the attack, even on voting, all of it's connected, right? And at the end of the day, it is about this orange man wanting to be a king, and those who follow him who want to really dismantle the system. And so part of the way to do that is you go after the culture, you go after the history, you go after anything that has to do with upward mobility, right? And I was talking to someone on my way over here. I said, it's no accident, right? And if they come for me, they're coming for you.
Yes.
Right? And so we're at this inflection point where we have no choice but to fight back in various ways. And the fact that we talk about the power of knowledge, right? And so if you don't know that history, you don't even know that we're in the midst of what will eventually have to be a third Reconstruction. You won't even know it if you're not understanding how we got here and the history. And so that's what I've been reading. I want to get away and just take a few weeks. I don't know how I'm going to do it. I just want to go back and just go. Okay, good. I need a break.
Come join us for Critical Race
Yes.
Summer School.
Okay,
Critical Race Theory Summer School, folks. Come and join us.
But what's important is that we are strategic about it, right, and really, really focus on what we have to do. And so being out here in the streets is that time, right, to really show up and focus and connect the dots to all of the other attacks against the federal government, against the Kennedy Center, right? Culture, against the ability for us to have upward mobility in this country, and to set up a system of authoritarianism that means that there'll be a few people who control all of us. And the history shows us we're not going to do that. And we're going to be polite when we need to be, but we're going to be hell raisers when we need to be, and this is a hell raise moment.
Yes, it
We know how
is.
to do that. So speaking of Reconstruction, Jill, I want to come back to you. So one of the things we know about what made redemption possible, that's the overthrow of Reconstruction, wasn't just that the South gained so much power, but reconciliation, the idea that the North joined forces with the South to allow them to dictate the terms not only of Black life, but eventually through the federal government, the terms of Black life across the country. One might say we're in a similar moment now with so many institutions doing this sort of a preemptory compliance. Like, we're not going to fight this, right? And it's even been reported by one of the technocrats behind this sort of anti-Blackness that, you know what, the liberals are not going to fight this. They're not going to support diversity, equity, inclusion. They're not going to fight back against this, so we've got this. So what do we need to understand about the preemptory compliance, the instinct to say, you know what, we're going to fold? And we've seen it with the law firms, with the universities, with foundations. What message do we need to deliver to them about the wages of preemptory over compliance?
Great question. I think it's recognizing the moment that we're in. I have to admit, when I used to study about the Holocaust, I used to think, what were other people doing? Weren't the neighbors speaking up? Why didn't people get out of town? Because maybe it took that long for people to understand how bad it really was, right? We're in that moment. We're in that moment. And so I do think it's important for us to recognize that we're in the moment. And I think something that keeps me going and gives me hope is my students. You all, no offense to any of my prior students, but this year, the commitment, the focus, the passion has been unparalleled of the students. Young people, I'm confident, will lead this movement as well. It will take all of us, but historically young people have always been at the forefront, whether it was Soweto, whether it was Greensboro. You think about the Greensboro four from North Carolina A&T who sat in at the Woolworths counter. The youngest was only 17 years old. And the others were young as well, only 5 years older than Emmett Till would have been had he not been murdered. So young people will lead the charge. I also think that's why there were, now, I've heard different things. Some people say there were rumors they were trying to take the Woolworths counter out of the
We don't even
museum.
know.
I don't know if it was a rumor or not, but I could see why.
Yes.
Because that is a symbol of young resistance,
Yes.
young power, the courage it took. There were 4 of them that Monday. The next day, there were 16 to 20. Later,
kept
there were dozens. That's the power of young people, and I'm encouraged by my students.
Now, I want to ask one more quick question to Melanie. I want to bring you back in here before we bring Barbara in for our close. Just very quickly, we know we're in a generational fight right now to save civil rights and to save our history. It's a war on memory is what we're dealing with. Just one quick thing that keeps you energized and resilient in this battle. You've been fighting a long time, so what's keeping you energized going forward?
Community, a sense of community, a sense of, my hashtag is coalition builder. And so being able to see what so many of us coming together at such a time as this. We all have been together, but we really together in a different way in this moment with Freedom to Learn and what you've been doing forever. And this is, some people don't say, they didn't just start yesterday. You've been doing this Freedom to Learn for this is the 3rd year. So being able to be consistent, but also that you've got new things happening, State of the People Power Tour, right? With Angela Rye and a whole bunch of us, a very intergenerational organizing that's going on, across this country, right? And one of the things, that I'm cautiously hopeful about are things where we see folks getting out in the streets, right? That's really not made up of a lot of black people, right? It's made up of white people. And why that's important is because when you talk about the attack on diversity, equity, inclusion, there's just, that's just helping the black people and the brown people. But no, it's helping white women, right? And so I think that's very important too for the resistance. Everybody play a role in it. And that's how there's no way you're gonna tear down this mantle or build up this against this fight without there being multiple movements. And so from whatever perch people sit at, we have to fight and understand that because of history, we know some of this will take, the damage that's already been done can take decades, right? So being able to be conscious of how young I am, understanding that some of this I might not see the end of it, but I got a 13-year-old nephew sitting on the other side of that glass.
I know that's right.
Who started protesting with us on voting rights when he was 9, and on my way, he's with his father, so that's my nephew and my great nephew. So add those years, have a great nephew. But he marched with us when we were fighting in 2021. That's 4 years ago. Yeah. So he was 9. And he says, and so we're passing Freedom Plaza when we were at Emancipation Day. He said, Auntie, that's where we were the other day, right? I said, yeah, we're going. He said, so where are we marching from? I said, we're not marching, we're walking tomorrow.
We're walking.
So that keeps me going.
I like that.
Community, our unity, and seeing multiple attacks against this foolishness that we're living through right now.
Thank you so much, Janelle. Thank you so much, Melanie. As Barbara gets settled on the show, I want to say to you, Kim, one of the things that is energizing me, earlier today, we had the former ambassador to Qatar. Liz McCune came. Her father was the 3rd African-American to graduate from West Point, and she was here just so upset because his history has been completely removed from the website. Knowing that we're doing this work is what keeps me energized. What keeps you energized? And then pull Barbara Arnwine in here, who's going to energize all of us.
Well, that was going to be my first answer to it, Barbara Arnwine. and you all, are about to see that. But, I tell you one of the most important moments for me, and actually Barbara shared this with me as well, being in Tulsa, and people in Tulsa not knowing the history that happened there. If you do not know that all of your aspirations were burnt to the ground, if you do not know that the people who were able to get into this society and make it work for them were robbed of it, if you don't know that the ground that you're standing on isn't natural, it is the product of erasure, it's a product of violence, it's a product of blood. If you don't know that, then your inference is we must never have done anything. We must not have the capacity to do this. We don't have the values that it takes to make it here. So we need to be able to recover that history. So we erase that as a remote possibility of how to interpret where we are at this time. We've often heard that those who can't remember the past are doomed to repeat it. Today, we're confronted with a more disturbing reality that those who would erase our past are intending to repeat it. That's what the return to. That's what this new redemption is about. But that's not for me to preach.
Come on, Barbara.
I want to bring Barbara Arnwine, president of the Transformative Justice Coalition. Barbara Arnwine, I can't tell you how many times I've been with her when she's finished and people walk up and say, now what church do you preach at? So Barbara, we've been here for 3 hours. We've been talking about the road ahead. We've been talking about why we must travel it. We have no choice. But we want you to give us our marching orders as we ready for our day of action tomorrow.
Come on, Barbara, bring it
right
home
now.
for us.
Good evening, good afternoon.
Hey now, Barbara Arnwine's in the place.
You know, right now, the first thing you should say to yourself every morning, and that's what this program has been all today, and what it's going to be all next tomorrow and all the weeks following, you should say to yourself when you look in that mirror, I'm good trouble.
I'm good trouble.
I'm good trouble. I'm good trouble. That's what you want to be clear about, that in this moment, that we'll never be silenced. In this moment, we will make some real strong efforts to make sure that our story, they talk about his story, her story, our story is told. And to do that, it means that Professor Kaye, my mighty sister Kim, Dr. Kim, it means that in this moment that, a lot of people talk about their mental health when there's so much fear, retaliation, threats, and destruction going on around us. They say, Barbara, how do we hold on? Well, the way you hold on is to remember that the old gospel song says, what? Deep in my soul. It doesn't say out there in the books. It doesn't just say out there in the atmosphere. It says deep in my soul. I do what? Believe. You see, we have to have that kind of spirit, that we know that regardless of what happens, that deep in my soul, I am the family griot. I am the historian of my people. I am the fighter for my people and their future. That nobody can erase that from me. Have that kind of strength and fight in the streets. Because what you got in your heart, they say, is manifest in everything you do. So if you have deep in your soul, deep in your heart, this commitment, then it's going to show in your activism. Because a lot of people say, well, I'm tired. I say, honey, don't you remember that Sister Fannie Lou Hamer said, I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. And that was decades ago. That when you realize that if you're dealing in a system that is constructed on white structural racism, then every day you have a battle. Every day you have to fight to dismantle it. Every day you have to fight to rise above its gravitational pull. You gotta believe that you can fly, right? Because racial denial is essential to any effort to keep a people oppressed. downhearted, downtrodden. Take away their belief in themselves. Take away the power that comes from knowing who you are. The power that comes from knowing what you can accomplish. You see, people talk about empowering. There's nothing more empowering than knowing that I got it. I got it inside of me. I got it because of who I am. I got it because of the history of the struggle that are my parents and foreparents and so many people who never saw me, like Harriet Tubman. She never saw these Barbara and Kim and Kaye and everybody in this audience and everybody listening throughout the country. She never saw us, but she did see us in her visions. In her visions, she rocked and rolled with us. She knew that we would be those seeds that would be planted beside the water, right? She knew that we would never be moved. So that's the power that I just want to speak to in this moment, because Kaye and Kim, they know our history too.
I love that. Thank you so much. Barbara Armour, folks, we wanted to leave you with a special treat, get you fired up with what's going on. Tomorrow, I want to be clear, we are meeting at 11 a.m. at the John A. Wilson Building steps. Yes. We are not marching. We're simply walking over to the Smithsonian Museum of African American History and Culture, what we call the Blacksonian. We're going to be there. We will have T-shirts. We will have signs. We are saying hashtag Hands off our history. Folks, I want to leave you with the words of Toni Morrison from Song of Solomon. She said, you want to fly, you got to give up the stuff. Now, she didn't say stuff in the book. I can't say the words she said. The stuff that weighs you down. If people are feeling weighed down at this moment, if people are feeling they can't go forward at this moment, you got to give that up and come and stand with us tomorrow. Put your body on the line and be a part of that. Professor Kim, your final word here.
The only guarantee is that if we don't fight, we can't win.
There you go. That's
the only guarantee,
folks. But when we fight, we win. Meet us there tomorrow, folks. Do what Sylvia Cyrus said from Masala. If you're in the DMV area, come down to the John Wilson Building steps. Come to the Blacksonian Museum. If you're not in the DMV area, go to the Black Museum in your community. If you can't get to that museum or they don't have one, go to the library. If you can't get to the library, buy a book. If you can't buy a book, write a letter. If you can't write a letter, send a tweet. If not, do what my mom's going to do. Stand on your porch and just say, I love Black history, so the whole community can hear it. You can't do everything, but you can do something. Today with Dr. Kaye, I'm Dr. Kaye Wise Whitehead. Meet me back here on Monday at 3 p.m. for another conversation that matters.